Welcome to the Fasthosts ProActive podcast, Spill the IT. Each episode, we'll sit down with some of the amazing ProActive team and chat through their experiences of the ups and downs of IT infrastructure management in small businesses. There's always plenty to chat about.
Welcome back, everybody, for another podcast session with Spill the IT from Fasthosts ProActive. Today we are at their very impressive data centre here in Worcestershire. Real privilege to be here. And today we're going to do another session. It's going to be a deep dive into one of Fasthosts ProActive's customers. And with me today, I have Roy and I have Tony from the Xentian Group.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, how are you both?
Very well, thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Good. Well, it's good to have you on the podcast here today. So, Xentian Group. So, I've got to hear that you're a specialist integration consultancy and your particular focus is on B2B supply chain tech. And what we're going to do today is we're going to understand a little bit about that. But before you get talking about what you do, let's just have a little bit of an overview of who you are and a little bit of the journey of how you got here today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Tony Goddard. I'm a director and principal consultant at Xentian. I've been working in integration work for almost 40 years now. Designed some systems for lots of the large companies around the UK and even government departments as well. So we joined Xentian, set up Xentian about 3 years ago with Roy and a number of colleagues, and really.
Well, you say that, but you've been in the industry for 40 years. You must have seen massive change, but that must be something that's constantly changing for you.
That's right, and I think this is one of the things we enjoy about Xentian is that we like to not just keep up with the changes, but get in advance of them, because being able to look ahead with a crystal ball and see where things are going, that's where it can really deliver the benefits.
And Roy, what about yourself?
Yes, I'm Roy Wright, also Director and Principal Consultant. Didn't have much variation on the titles. But yes, I spent about 30 years in IT, primarily in EDI in the beginning, but as we've seen an evolution of the technology, that's become more focused on B2B supply chain technology and sort of business solutions as well.
Fantastic. Well, look, we're going to talk about that right now because I'm super keen to understand. We spoke a little bit earlier before this podcast. So just get me into the crux of what you do. What is it? What's your solution? What are you looking to solve? What are the problems, typical problems you're trying to solve?
Well, the real world is based on supply chain, which is basically moving products from one place to another, whether it's raw materials, manufactured products, etc. Covers everything we enjoy in the world, including food. And that supply chain is either between business to business, or sort of effectively wholesale, or it's business to consumer, which is retail. We're generally focused on the B2B side, but clearly there is also an aspect which moves into that B2C side. So we're looking at ways where we can counter I'm sure everyone's aware of disruption in supply chain. It's all in the news. Certainly during the COVID years, there was big issues about it, whether it was toilet paper or whatever it was. But those supply chain issues can sometimes be resolved through good supply chain solutions in the B2B sphere. And clearly, where there is disruption, the current crop of solutions are not working as efficiently as they could. Right. So we're looking at ways in which we can actually provide solutions that confront those problems and actually solve them.
So you spoke about COVID there, and I know a few articles that I read after COVID was about shortening of supply chain, more diversity of supply chain. Just share with me what's actually happening on the ground out there right now, and is that still a ripple effect from that, or have things settled down?
Largely, no. One of the main reasons is
for you.
One of the problems is that we're confronted with effectively unisourced supply chains. So if we take food as an example, because obviously it's something that everybody's engaged with, there are very big companies that supply the majority of the food, whether it's fish coming into the UK, for instance, it comes through via very selective suppliers, even though you end up buying it from multiple supermarkets, etc. And as a result of that, there's a sort of stranglehold on the market and how things are provided. And that's true for most products as well. However, In order to counter that, you need more diversity in those supply chains. And you can create that by allowing smaller companies to be able to get engaged with it in a B2B, in the B2B market, but also in the B2C, so that you want to give solutions that allow a more dynamic approach to how people buy their products, rather than thinking, oh, I can only go to a supermarket to get my food. So we've obviously seen disruption in the farming industry right across Europe. We've also seen some protests in the UK for various reasons, but ultimately it's about how do you get products, whether it's food or any other white goods, you name it, how do we get those products in front of consumers in an ethical way, in a way that's compliant with changes we see in the industry, so those kind of green economy kind of attributes, but also how we give more access to, say, those up and coming businesses, so we can get that diversity and resilience and agility, because when you have a sole supplier for something and that sole supplier disappears, it's no longer provided. Whereas if you've spread amongst a number of different inputs and providers, you've got much more chance of having a resilient system.
Interesting. So I guess what you're saying there is to the smaller businesses, the you set up and coming businesses, or even, dare I say it, startups. Whereas previously people might have said, I can't even get one foot on the ladder to become part of this supply chain solution. So I guess that's opening up that opportunity for smaller businesses.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's interesting, having worked for lots of large companies in the UK and Europe. They all benefit from these the B2B innovations that come along, but it's the smaller businesses that don't. And as an example, something we're looking at the moment is my wife runs a small shop, local shop, but we're looking at how even she can benefit from connecting to her suppliers using integration technology that the big boys use on a daily basis, but is so far not available for those tiny one-man, one-woman companies.
Right.
And how that can assist her with not just keeping a business running, but building it, because these days it's tough for everyone out there. So the more that we can assist, particularly SMEs out there, using this technology, the better.
So looking at that supply chain tech, take me through a typical scenario. So we have a small grower, and I guess we're looking at this on a global scale, yeah? So let's look at a small grower of something that's a farmer in India, for instance, who wants to supply his produce into Europe or into the UK. Where is he going to be successful? How's he going to be more successful as a result of working through the supply chain solutions that you might typically put together?
Okay, so there are a number of different, if you disregard the regulatory aspects, obviously, depending on
let's talk about utopia. Yeah.
But if you just look at the, if you like, the starts with the logistical side, because obviously the farmer grows, he has a produce which he wishes to then sell. And that's the same with anything you're manufacturing. Obviously, you just want to be able to get it out there and get it in front of people who want to purchase it. But equally, you need to be able to have the supply chain on the B2B side in order to, for instance, have fuel to run a tractor, or to have fertilizer that you need to put onto your field. And sometimes that capacity is not always there, and you need that agility to be able to say, short supply, I need to be able to go to another supplier very quickly. Because in some instances we find that even with large corporations, onboarding a new trading partner can take months, literally months. So if you have a trading partner through adverse economic effects who suddenly cannot trade anymore, how do you then suddenly bring somebody else on if it takes 6 months to get them up and running and interconnected? So that's at very much corporate level. Now clearly, people who are much smaller, they're not going to want to have to faff around basically with technology. They just want to sell their product. Therefore, they need easy access to not only a new supply chain for B2B, but also the logistics side. And that's one of the key factors. There has to be a foundational layer of logistics for distribution. So if you're trying to sell, whether it's from India or it's the heart of the countryside in the UK, and you want to be able to get it, send it to the north of England, you're still going to have a distribution method which is regional. national, regional, and even local.
Yeah.
So we're seeing new groups start up that are trying to produce these kinds of environments, where there are local distribution centres, and it can literally be at somebody's garage in some cases. So you have a bulk delivery to a distribution centre, double quotes, could be a garage for instance, and then fresh produce can be distributed from there in a local way. But the people running that local distribution, could be literally based on a village, they need to be able to have the access to the logistics to provide them, but also the produce coming in. So a farmer, you probably heard Rishi Sunak recently talking about Farm to Fork initiative, which is trying to get farmers to be able to sell directly to consumers. And you probably noticed that they've been talking about how we can grow things in the UK, for instance, that are not necessarily, you can swap out with things that are necessarily growing in Europe or in the rest of the world. And again, there are carbon offsets for that, because you're not having to transport products. But if you're going to have to do that, you're going to need to know where those supplies are coming from. And again, it's how do you contact them? How do you set up a formal trading relationship with them to be able to order products? And that's a process we call order to cash. So you're literally going from an order back to an invoice. But equally, you're talking about the transport side of things. How do you get a product from one place to another? How do you organise that so that if you've ever had anything delivered, sometimes it can be hell to try and get something delivered to your door.
Of course.
So trying to organise that so it's all fluid and there's no disruption. And I think the key driver there is just the modern world. People are used to buying something off Amazon and literally having it turn up the next day.
Yeah, that's the benchmark. That's the level, isn't it?
And the point is, we have to be able to allow other retailers to be able to have that kind of capacity. Otherwise, people will continue to buy from big megacore as opposed to saying, let's support small businesses, where this is all about trying to support them in order that they can expand their business. So that's really where it's coming from. Those are the key aspects, say logistics and distribution and interconnection with suppliers.
So, great. So let's ask the question around IT infrastructure, because we're here today at the Fasthosts ProActive Centre. We're here today, and I know you've been around their data centre this morning, and obviously we'll come back a little bit later to why you're using Fasthosts ProActive. But from a selfish perspective, let's just look at your IT infrastructure. What are your needs? What do you need to have in place to support the opportunities and to support some of the solutions that you're supplying to your customers?
Tony, did you want to?
Well, I think a lot of the time we're looking at developing innovative solutions for our clients, and to be able to do that, we need to be able to work in a very dynamic environment, and with the infrastructure provided by Fasthosts, they've worked with us to design that specifically for our requirements, and it's not just to meet those current demands. What we've found with Fasthosts is that they're really good at working with us for new innovations as well. So with other, let's say, cloud service providers, you don't get that interaction. With Fasthosts, you know that you can actually speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about and can put our ideas into reality in terms of the hardware and the infrastructure that we need to support it. So from a business perspective, it takes a weight off our minds, because we're working with a team of professionals in the same kind of manner as we like to work, and it feels like they're an extension of our company rather than working with somebody completely different and off-site. And a lot of the time with the cloud services, you're not even speaking to humans, you're just dealing with a portal. So I think that, to my mind, it's that human aspect of it and the intelligence behind it as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big driver for Fasthosts on the proactive side is that they're also looking at things, they're bringing solutions to you that then support you and support how you then take yourself to market, or even invent things, I guess, in how you can then go and talk to customers. And I guess that's quite an important thing as well. They give you fuel to be able to expand what you talk about.
Yeah. It's having that rapport with people who are technically astute.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about going around the data center. So not only does that give you confidence that your systems are entirely professional and secure, and you know you can deliver the level of service required of a professional service that people are then going to rely on. And I think has been mentioned, there's a tier 4 data center here, which I think is one of the only tier 4 centers in the UK. And that level of service gives us the confidence that we can provide a service that we can then rely on being there for our customers. And equally, from their perspective, those customers have that confidence that the service is always going to be available. But equally, you need that rapport to be able to, when you come up with new ideas, and they may be fanciful at some points, but you want to be able to discuss those and just put those ideas out there and see how they can fit into the greater scheme of things and understand how that market can be supported for the future. Because technical innovation is all very well, especially when it's at the cutting edge, but it has to be supportable, maintainable, and it has to be able to be delivered. So being able to talk to people who are technically astute and understand that is really helpful.
Yeah, and I guess why would you employ that level of expertise internally? You wouldn't, would you? Because it would be costing you a lot of money, and you can dip in and out of it, I guess, when you want. Where do you see? Because obviously, Tony, you've seen from your perspective, being in this industry for 40 years, you've seen massive change. You're going to continue to see massive change. Where's your industry going? Where's it all going to end up? If we said another decade from here, what's it going to look like? We were having the conversation earlier around Starlink, weren't we? And I really, I think that might have to be for another podcast. But I mean, obviously, looking at low orbit satellites, supporting those sort of more remote growers and suppliers and things like that. How fascinating is that going to be? I mean, is that going to be part of the future? Is that going to be what you're going to be involved with more and more?
I certainly think that it needs to be. Inevitably, any industry is faced with having to confront a monopoly, effectively. So you've got the large corporations that can take hold of a market and basically subdue any kind of diversity that might grow out from individual small providers. That's true with technology, it's true with food production, it's true with manufacture of all sorts of different goods. You mentioned sort of the Amazon concept, and that's a clear indication of where, if it's left just to follow its own path, the big money will always win out. And that's why I think we need that ability to create that diversification, because we need to have agile markets. We need to have choice in the market. Everybody loves choice, and I think
choice and difference, I guess, because sometimes we don't get that. We don't get that choice, do we?
Exactly. And the point is, it's normally the cutting edge stuff usually comes, in fact, from the smaller providers, because they're the ones who are coming up with the innovative ideas to say, I can't really get a hold in this market. What can I come up with to make a difference? So you get these new ideas coming out. And so, as you mentioned, things like radio mesh, things like Starlink, that can allow people to integrate in all sorts of remote places. And that could be the Malvern Hills. It's just as remote. You don't happen to a signal you get here. But it could be places just in the UK where you do not, a sheep farmer, for instance, who cannot get good signal, but also needs to be able to get data interaction. So it's even simple things like that on a daily basis, as well as remote farmers. It could be a Bhutanese, yak farmer, for instance, who wants to sell, yak milk. Those kinds of things, you still need to have an integration into a wider market. And why not? Because it's supporting smaller people who are individuals trying to make a living, trying to make a business grow. So it's all good for that sort of that growth aspect.
Yeah, and I guess technology is the enabler of that. I mean, it all comes. I think the theory behind it all is great, isn't it? But I think what I'm getting from you guys today is, without the technology, without that IT infrastructure, really you can't even begin to start to think about it.
Yeah, I think also these days AI is the big thing.
Hang on, we've been on podcasts for 25 minutes now, and this is the first time that anyone's mentioned it. Yeah.
I think the important thing is that we don't look at AI as replacing human intelligence, because something we place a huge amount of value with Xentian is that human interaction and actually listening to people. And that's one of the reasons why we like working with Fasthosts, because they've got the same ethos as us. And in terms of the human intelligence aspect, the technology isn't the issue, it's how you actually put it to use. And this is where I think we excel in this, because we've got so much experience in different types of technology. The underlying technology itself doesn't really matter, it's how we actually put it into practice.
Yeah.
And as an example, we were talking earlier about the supply chain, and one of the critical things about the supply chain is onboarding trading partners, getting those connections between businesses going. And traditionally, a lot of the companies we've worked for previously, it takes them 3 to 6 months to get a new connection in place. Whereas using the technology and the methodologies we've put together, we're now at a stage where with a lot of our clients we can actually get those connections in place faster than they can actually put a project plan together. So,
which is great.
It's hours or days to the stage where they're ready to test with their trading partners. So this is how the human intelligence coupled with the technology really kind of pays off.
And I guess from the Fasthosts perspective and having that technical infrastructure supporting always on type facility, you know you're never going to not deliver on your promise, I guess.
Precisely, and I think this is one of the nice things about the Fasthosts, that you don't have that worry in the back of your mind where you're trying to explain a new concept to a client and
you think, can we do it?
Exactly. We know we can do it because we've got a good relationship with Fasthosts.
Yeah.
So it just takes out one of the factors. You can just get on with developing those innovations rather than worrying about how you're going to do it.
Do you ever phone Gary up and say, Gary, we've told a client we can do this, can we?
The conversations are often quite out there, because we're always looking at new technology.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the point. It's you start mining those outer edges of technology, and before you know it, you've just invented something new and thinking, we could really do this. This is really good.
So anybody out there today listening to this podcast, what advice would you give them about looking at outsourcing their IT infrastructure and looking at a service like Fasthosts? What would you recommend?
I think you have to, obviously you need to know what you're after, but the good thing about Fasthosts is, and certainly the experience we had, was that they're very willing to engage with you to actually hone that understanding of what they can provide to suit your requirements. So even if you don't have an absolute idea of how can we move forward, they're very willing to actually engage with you and develop that environment. So that made it very easy to have those conversations and know that we would talk to people who knew what they were talking about and not just saying, hey, you need 10 servers, but that could actually engage and say, right, what do you need? Why do you need it? Let's have a look at how we can produce this and provide it for your particular requirements. Obviously, we're very technical, therefore we have quite exacting requirements, and the point is they were able to accommodate those requirements with no hassle, whereas sometimes you can get pushback, but Fasthosts are able to take us on board.
I think another aspect is what's important to everyone these days, which is the cost management. Because we've found with cloud-based services, there are so many different issues with the costs and trying to keep control of them because of their different charging policies, tiered levels, whether they charge for additional services or data transfers. So at the end of the month, you're not too sure what you're being billed for. Whereas with Fasthosts, we get a bill which is, I'd like to say, very reasonable. Don't want to putting the prices up, but it is actually very reasonable. And the other thing is it's very scalable as well, because we know that if we need to expand the service or even scale it down, we know what we're going to expect at the end of every month, and we can budget for that. And that's really important for any business these days, to try to manage that, the costs of building the business, and not worry about being hit with a huge bill at the end of the month because of
unforeseen circumstances or usage. Cost of consumption is a massive subject in the industry anyway, and it's almost like you want to rise and fall with that and not feel you're over committed to something and you're not utilising it, or all of a sudden you need more and you're going to get charged more money, which is a big worry. Sort of fixing those overheads. Guys, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thanks for your time today. I think, Roy, I'd love to get back on with you and Gary, and we're going to talk about Starlink and that and all that connectivity, because I think that would be a fascinating sort of go to those fringes of what's possible and beyond. which will be really good. But thanks for your time today. It's been great, and good to hear about your business, and I hope it continues to be successful. And for everybody listening, thanks for tuning in today. And we'll see you next time for another session here at Fasthosts ProActive for Spill the IT.